Once upon a time, there was a merchant who was so wealthy that he could have paved an entire street with gold and still had enough left over for a small alleyway. But he didn't do that. He knew the value of money too well to waste it like that. He was so clever that every coin he spent earned him $1 in return, and he continued this way until he died. His son inherited this fortune and lived a wild, merry life with it. He went to costume parties every night, made kites out of high-value banknotes, and threw gold coins into the ocean instead of stones, skipping them across the water. Naturally, he soon lost all his money. Eventually, he had nothing left but a pair of slippers, an old dressing gown, and a few cents. At this point, all his friends abandoned him. They wouldn't even be seen walking down the street with him. However, one friend, who was quite kind, sent him an old trunk with a short message. "Pack up." "That's easy to say," the son replied, "but I have nothing left to pack." So he simply sat inside the trunk himself. It turned out to be a very magical trunk. As soon as anyone pressed the lock, it could fly. He shut the lid, pressed the lock, and whoosh, the trunk flew up the chimney with the merchant's son inside, soaring right up into the clouds. Whenever the bottom of the trunk creaked, he was terrified, for if it fell apart, he would have taken a terrible tumble over the trees. However, he arrived safely in the land of Turkey. He hid the trunk in the woods under some dry leaves and walked into town. He fit in perfectly, as all the Turks walked around wearing dressing gowns and slippers just like him. He happened to meet a nurse carrying a small child. "Hey there, Turkish nurse," he called out. "What is that castle near the town with the windows placed so high up?" "The king's daughter lives there," she replied. "A prophecy says she will be made very unhappy by a lover, so no one is allowed to visit her unless the king and queen are present." "Thank you," said the merchant's son. He went back to the woods, sat in his trunk, flew up to the castle roof, and climbed through the window into the princess's room. She was lying on the sofa asleep, and she was so beautiful that the merchant's son couldn't stop himself from kissing her. She woke up, startled and frightened, but he told her he was a Turkish angel who had flown down through the air just to see her. This flattered her immensely. He sat by her side and talked to her. He told her that her eyes were like beautiful dark lakes where thoughts swam around like little mermaids, and he described her forehead as a snowy mountain hiding splendid halls full of pictures. Then he told her stories about the stork who brings beautiful babies from the rivers. These were delightful stories, and when he asked the princess to marry him, she said yes immediately. "But you must come back on Saturday," she said. "The king and queen will be having tea with me then. They will be so proud when they find out I am going to marry a Turkish angel. But mind you, you must have some very lovely stories to tell them. My parents love stories more than anything. My mother prefers ones that are deep and moral, but my father likes funny ones that make him laugh." "Understood, Hajjan, understood," he replied. "I shall bring no other wedding gift than a story." And so they parted ways, but before he left, the princess gave him a sword studded with gold coins, which was exactly what he needed. He flew back to town, bought a new dressing gown, and returned to the woods. There, he sat down to compose a story so it would be ready by Saturday, which was not an easy task. However, by Saturday, it was ready. He went to see the princess. The king, the queen, and the entire court were having tea with her, and they received him with great politeness. "Will you tell us a story?" asked the queen. "One that is instructive and full of deep wisdom." "Yes, but let it be something to laugh at too," added the king. "Certainly," the merchant's son replied. He began at once, asking them to listen closely. Once upon a time, there was a bundle of matches who were exceedingly proud of their noble heritage. Their family tree, that is the large pine tree they had been cut from, had once been a massive ancient tree in the forest. The matches were now lying between a tinderbox and an old iron pot, talking about their younger days. "Ah, back then we grew on the green branches, and we were just as green," said the matches. "Every morning and evening we were fed diamond drops of dew. Whenever the sun shone, we felt its warm rays, and the little birds told us stories as they sang. We knew we were rich because the other trees only wore their green clothes in the summer, but our family could afford to wear green in both summer and winter. But then the woodcutter came, like a great revolution, and our family was chopped down. The head of the family got a job as the mainmast on a magnificent ship that can sail around the world whenever it likes. The other branches went to various places, and our job now is to bring light to the common people. That is how high-born aristocrats like us ended up in a kitchen." "My fate has been quite different," said the iron pot standing next to the matches. From the moment I entered the world, I've done nothing but cooking and scrubbing. I am the most important thing in this house when solid, useful work is needed. My only pleasure is to be scrubbed clean and shiny after dinner, then sit in my place and have a sensible conversation with my neighbors. All of us here live within these four walls, except for the water bucket, who occasionally gets carried out to the courtyard. We get our news from the market basket, but he tells us very unpleasant things about the people and the government. Why, just the other day, an old pot was so alarmed by his news that he fell down and shattered. He was a radical, I tell you. You're talking too much, snapped the tinderbox, and the steel struck against the flint until sparks flew. We want to have a fun evening, don't we? Yes, of course, said the matches. Let's talk about who is the highest born. No, I don't like always talking about ourselves, remarked the pot. Let's think of some other entertainment. I'll start. We will tell stories about things that have happened to us. That will be easy and interesting. On the Baltic Sea, near the Danish shore. What a lovely opening, said the plates. I'm sure we shall all like this story. Yes, well, in my youth, I lived with a quiet family where the furniture was polished, the floors were scrubbed, and clean curtains were put up every 2 weeks. Oh, what an interesting way you have of telling a story, said the broom. One can easily tell you have spent a great deal of time in women's society. There is something so pure about what you say. That is quite true, said the water bucket, and he gave a little jump of joy, splashing some water on the floor. Then the pot continued his story, and the ending was just as good as the beginning. The plates rattled with pleasure, and the broom took some green parsley from the dustbin and crowned the pot with it. He knew it would annoy the others, but he thought, if I crown him today, he might crown me tomorrow. What? Now let's have a dance, said the fire tongs, and oh, how they danced. They kicked one leg up into the air so high that the chair cushion in the corner burst with laughter when she saw it. Will I get crowned now? Asked the fire tongs, so the broom found another wreath for the tongs. They are just common people after all, thought the matches. The tea urn was then asked to sing, but she said she had a cold and couldn't sing unless she was boiling hot. Everyone thought she was just being stuck up and didn't want to sing unless she was in the parlor on the table with the grand people. In the window sat an old quill pen that the maid usually wrote with. There was nothing remarkable about the pen except that it had been dipped too deep in the ink, but the pen was proud of that. If the tea urn won't sing, said the pen, she can forget it. There is a nightingale in a cage outside who can sing. She hasn't been taught much, certainly, but let's not criticize that tonight. I think it is highly improper, said the tea kettle, who was the kitchen singer and half-brother to the tea urn, that a rich foreign bird should be listened to here. Is that patriotic? Let the market basket decide what is right. I am certainly annoyed, said the basket, more annoyed inwardly than anyone can imagine. Is this a proper way to spend the evening? Wouldn't it be more sensible to put the house in order? If everyone went to their proper place, I would lead a game. That would be much better. Let's put on a play, they all cried. At that same moment, the door opened and the maid walked in. Everyone froze. No one moved a muscle. Yet, there wasn't a single pot among them who didn't have a high opinion of himself and what he could have done if he chose. Yes, if we had chosen, they each thought, we might have spent a very pleasant evening. The maid took the matches and struck them. Dear me, how they sputtered and blazed up. Now then, thought the matches, everyone can see that we are the leaders. How we shine, what a light we give. And right as they said that, their light burned out. What a brilliant story, said the queen. I felt as if I were really in the kitchen watching the matches. Yes, you shall marry our daughter. Certainly, said the king, you shall have our daughter. The king spoke to him informally, as he was about to become one of the family. The wedding day was set, and on the evening before, the whole city was illuminated with lights. Cakes and candies were thrown to the crowds. The street urchins stood on their tiptoes, shouted, "Hurrah!" and whistled through their fingers. Altogether, it was a very splendid affair. I should give them a treat as well, thought the merchant's son. So he went out and bought rockets, firecrackers, and every sort of firework imaginable. He packed them into his trunk and flew up into the air. What a zooming and banging they made as they went off. When the Turks saw such a sight in the sky, they jumped so high that their slippers flew around their ears. After this, it was easy for them to believe that the princess was really marrying a Turkish angel. As soon as the merchant's son had landed his flying trunk in the woods after the fireworks display, he thought, I will go back into town now and hear what people thought of the show. It was only natural that he wanted to know, and what strange things people were saying, to be sure. Everyone he asked had a different tale to tell, though they all agreed it was very beautiful. "I saw the Turkish angel myself," said one. "He had eyes like glittering stars and a head like foaming water." "He flew in a cloak of fire," cried another, and lovely little cherubs peeked out from the folds of it. He heard many more wonderful things about himself, and he knew that the next day he was to be married. After this, he went back to the forest to rest inside his trunk, but the trunk had disappeared. A spark from the fireworks had remained inside and set it on fire. It was burned to ashes. So the merchant's son could not fly anymore, and he could not go to meet his bride. She stood on the roof all day waiting for him, and most likely she is waiting there still. Meanwhile, he wanders through the world telling fairy tales, but none of them are quite as amusing as the one he told about the matches.